Welcome back, NASCAR fans. Chris here with Jaeger Bombs Fantasy Sports to bring you this week's DFS NASCAR preview show. This week, all three series will be heading to Darlington, the track too tough to tame. So some interesting stuff here. We're going to go over the track. We're going to go over each series, looking at our DFS cheat sheet, looking at some track history, track type history, current form stuff. On the cup sheet, we keep adding more and more each and every week on there for the tools, which eventually will come to the truck and O'Reilly series sheets as well. But for now, they're on the cup, so we'll go a little bit more extensive into the cup series. Looking at the track here, we got Darlington Raceway. It is a 1.366 oval. On the steep side, turns 1 and 2, we're looking at 25 degrees of banking, turns 3 and 4, 23 degrees of banking. And this year, a little bit more exciting, we've added, so it's already one of the older tracks. The last repave was in 2008. They did a partial repave in turn 2, 2021, but one of the older tracks, very high tire wear, fall off. This year could be even more crazy. We heard Denny Hamlin earlier. I posted in the chat talking about close to 4 second, maybe even more fall off. They're doing the new 750 horsepower package, which was for all of the road courses this year, all of the short tracks, but then also, which I have considered to be an intermediate track, Darlington. It's pretty much any track less than 1.5 miles. Darlington is 1.366, so it's going to get that 750 horsepower package, which could make things absolutely chaotic this race. We'll talk about some of that when we get to optimal lineup information in the Cup Series. The other track, Nashville, that isn't, I guess, considered a short track in the way I group them. It is 1.33. I consider it a short flat track. Just because of the 14 degrees of banking versus the steep at Darlington. So Darlington to me is the only intermediate track in my groupings that's going to have the 750 horsepower. So we got that twice a year to look forward to. Could be one of the best races that we've seen in quite a while. So the Truck Series is back on track for the first time since the road course at St. Petersburg. They've also raced at Atlanta and Daytona, so super speedway, hybrid super speedway, and the road course. So it could be interesting in terms of what we're going to see there getting onto the first intermediate track. So we're just going to jump right in here, and we are going to talk about the Truck Series. Right at the top, we got Corey Heim, and there's a good reason for that. We will just going to go ahead and sort by being that this is the first intermediate track. He won the race here last year at Darlington. And looking at his intermediate tracks last year on the Truck Series, 4 wins in the 6 races. Finished all 6 of those races in the top 5, and he led 433 laps. No other driver in this field led more than 94 laps. That's Lane Riggs there at 10.5. Average finish of 1.8, absolutely incredible. 79.6 DK average. So this seems like a situation where we would possibly see the difference in pricing like we will see in the O'Reilly series when Kyle Larson's in there. We also have 2 Cup drivers this week. We've got Christopher Bell and Ross Chastain. They're both pulling triple duty, so we will see them in the O'Reilly Auto Parts race as well. So let's just look at some other track history here. We'll just sort this by the last 10 races average finish. Daniel Hemrick, runner-up last year in his only race over the last 10 in the Truck Series. Carson Hocevar, also another Cup driver in the field this week. 3 top 5s in his last 4 races here in Darlington in the Truck Series. Christian Eckes won this race in 2023, also finished 4th in 2024. He's back in the Truck Series here for this race. Grant Enfinger, 3rd last year. Ty Majeski, 4th. And Ty Majeski actually has 3 top 5s in his last 4 races. Could be a good play here this week for him as well. He's got the second highest DK average in there. Actually, he's got a higher DK average over the last 2 than Corey Heim as well, 37.1. So he's running in kind of like that top 5 area when we look at the last 5 races here at Darlington. Ben Rhodes has been pretty good, 11th and 3rd in his last 2 races. Ross Chastain won this race when he was in it in 2024. He's at 9,500. So, before we see practice and qualifying, we got some very interesting decisions to make with 3 Cup Series drivers in the Truck Series field this week. Plus, you got Corey Heim, who absolutely dominated the intermediate tracks last season. So it's a very interesting top tier. I can't wait for practice and qualifying to see how it all shakes out and the decisions that we're going to make, how the ownership's going to pan out. So stay tuned for that as we get closer to as we get closer to the weekend here, it's Thursday today. We got practice and qualifying tomorrow. I will bring that kind of schedule up. We'll have a look at that here real quick as well, and just kind of look at to see what the weekend brings in terms of excitement on the track. So yes, here we go. We've got 3:30 p.m. Eastern practice and qualifying for the Truck Series. Is the only ones on track on Friday. And then at 7:30 p.m. Eastern, we got the race. Saturday, we've got, same as last week, noon Eastern, O'Reilly Auto Parts practice qualifying, and then Cup Series at 2:30 p.m. Eastern, and then the O'Reilly Auto Parts race at 5:30 p.m. Eastern. And then the Cup race this week is 3:30 p.m. Eastern, so keep that in mind as well. All right, so we're going to move on to, actually, before we do, let's look at the trucks here, just see how things have shaked out on the intermediate tracks last season. Ross Chastain, only 2 races, but 4.0, 1 top 5, 2 top 10s. Daniel Hemrick didn't get a win on the intermediates last year, but he had 3 top 5s and 4 top 10s, 6 races. Grant Enfinger, 7,600, very consistent, 5 top 10s in the 6 races. Lane Riggs had 4 top 5s in the 6 races, so there's some drivers that stand out. So far early in the season, not going into this race, I'm not going to be looking too much into form, just because, like I said, we had a super speedway, hybrid super speedway, and then a road course. So now we're on intermediate track. Things might shake out a little different. Chandler Smith's got a win, 2 top 5s so far this season. Joining him is Lane Riggs, who's also got a win, and Kyle Larson. No, sorry, I don't know who the third winner was. Anyway, moving on. Looking at the guys who are tied with him, with Chandler Smith in top 5s, Ben Rhodes, Ruggiero, and Majeski. And then Chandler Smith also 3 top 10s in all the races. He's the only driver to finish top 10 in all 3 races. And then there's only 3 drivers who have finished top 20 in all 3 races. Andres Perez in there at 6,400. So his consistency maybe want to look at a little bit more. So pay attention to his practice and qualifying. But looking at his, 16th here last year, that might work out if he starts outside the top 20. Could become one of the top. Same with Connor Mozak here at 13th. Those 2 drivers might become 2 of the top. If you're really going for 2 of those top drivers in the top tier, we're going to be looking at Perez and Mozak for sure. Maybe even Brendan Queen here, who has 2 top 20s and 1 top 10 over his 3 races. So it looks like the setup for this race is going to be very favorable. Stars and scrubs here. We're probably just looking at the guys in the top tier here who are good on intermediate tracks. We've got Cup drivers. We've got guys who have very good track history here. So we're probably going to be wanting, this 9K and up. We may want to try and jam 3 of those drivers in. So it's really nice to see that we have some excellent bottom tier guys here that we should be able to consider here this week for the truck race. All right, we're going to move on to the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series. Kyle Larson in the field this week, 15,000. Like I said, Christopher Bell, Ross Chastain are in there as well for Cup drivers. 15,000 for Larson. He's coming off a win in the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series last week. We'll just jump over to the season form and look at that here. Yeah, so he's got the win. He's got 2 wins on intermediate tracks in 3 races last year, 2.0 average finish. 89.2 DK average. So he's just been dominant when stepping down to this series. He won this race at Darlington in the O'Reilly Series in 2023 in the spring race. And then in the fall race of 2022, he also had a top 5 there. So the decision on the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series this week is going to be, are we paying up for Larson, or are we going to maybe try and get 2 guys above, 9K to Christopher Bell there at 12.5. Bell at 12.5 won this race in the fall of 2024. Justin Allgaier has got the best track history of all drivers here. He's number 1 in the model early on. He's got 3 wins and 9 top 10s in a row here at this track, including 3 wins and 5 top 5 finishes. He's been dominant in terms of lap slide. He's been dominant in terms of DK scoring. So, you look at the intermediate tracks last year for Allgaier, 8 races. He had 2 wins, 6 top 5s. Sorry, this is last year combined with Las Vegas as well last week. So keep that in mind here as well, that this is now 2025, 2026 track type history, which is the intermediate tracks. 6 top 5s in those 8 races, 536 laps led. So he's been a dominator. He's someone, if he's up there in the top 3 in practice, we're probably going to probably going to, again, make that tough decision of, are we going with Larson, or are we going to maybe go Allgaier and another driver in this 9K to Christopher Bell range? So stay tuned for practice and qualifying there. Other guys that stand out, we'll go last 5 here again in terms of average finish at the track. Austin Hill, 9,200, was 16th in the spring race. 16th in the spring race here last year. And then he was top 10 in 6 straight before that, and actually 7 top 10s in his last 10 races here, actually in his last 9, I guess you'd say. So he had 4 top 5s, 7 top 10s in those 8 races. So very, very consistent on the intermediate tracks last year. Wasn't a dominator by any means. So at 9,200, we're probably looking for a little bit of place differential to fit him in there with the likes of Larson, Allgaier, Christopher Bell in the field this week. I don't think we're going to see a potential dominator coming from outside of those top 3. So if you're looking at drivers in the top tier outside of those 3, this is just my early projection, obviously, then we're looking for guys that are going to give us some. So, if he's starting 4th or 5th, I'm probably going to end up going a little bit cheaper and looking for some place differential plays to fill in around those top dominators, which we normally see here at Darlington. We got Nick Sanchez right below him. He finished 8th, so very small sample size. But in those 8 races on intermediate tracks last year, 2 top 5s, 5 top 10s, 7 times he finished inside the top 20. So he was consistent. He's only 6,500, so he's a value play we're going to want to pay attention to. Jesse Love, 9,500, another driver we're probably going to need some place differential upside after practice and qualifying. Finished 11th, 6th, and 8th here, so I'm probably looking for him to start at least outside the top 15th, which I don't think is going to happen. He's got an average start of 6.4 so far this year. Qualifying has been very good for him. So it's going to be very tough to play him unless he shows absolutely dominant speed. But again, these guys that I'm saying probably aren't going to dominate in that top tier. They're probably quickly going to become very low-owned GPP plays. So kind of watch that if you're building a lot of lineups and looking to maybe pivot off of some of the chalk this week at a track that there's very high tire fall off, a lot of volatility. You're definitely going to want to possibly consider like an Austin Hill or a Jesse Love, who most people probably don't think are going to, like me, obviously, like I just said, outside of the top 3 drivers who are going to take those dominator points or who I'm projecting for dominator points. So it could be good GPP plays. Just keep that in mind. Other guys that have been good here, Sheldon Creed, 8,000. I like that because if you're going with the top tier driver, you can come down into that 8K range right away or that 7K range if you're going with 2 top guys. And he's got top 10s in 4 straight, 5 of his last 6, including 2 podium finishes in 2022 and 2024. He was another driver who was very consistent, 7 top 20s, 5 top 10s, 3 top 5s over the last 8 races on intermediate tracks. Again, not someone I'm looking to dominate. But should he start, just outside the top 10 or even 10th, I would even take a starting position somewhere around there for Creed, considering he's been good to start the year as well. 3 top 5s in the 5 races so far this season. Carson Quapple here. I always say his name wrong. I'm sorry. I apologize if if I got it wrong again. He's 5th last year, 14th, 19th. So he's progressively gotten better at Darlington. Seems to have figured out this tough track. He was consistent in terms of inside the top 20, but at 8,800, we need more than a top 20. So he's someone, again, probably going to consider for GPP close to that top range at 8,800. Going to have to see something from him in terms of practice, or maybe a poorer qualifying that puts him maybe 15th or back that gives him upside of place differential points. Otherwise, he's just a GPP play for me this week. Harrison Burton, 13th last year, first trip here in the Truck Series since 2021, but before that he was quite dominant, obviously different truck, but 2nd in 2021, or different car, sorry, 11th in 2021 in the spring, and 6th in 2020. Again, another driver that was not very consistent, didn't show a lot of upside at the intermediate tracks last year. Someone who did was Sam Mayer. He had 3 top 5s, 4 top 10s at the last 8 intermediate tracks. And he's been a little bit up and down, which is to be expected here at Darlington. 14th, 28th. So the last 2 races here haven't been great, but 4th, 11th, 8th, 11th, and 5th. So someone that we can maybe consider 8,500. So as you can see here with the pricing, it's looking like we're probably, as of now, Depends on Lars. If he's dominant in practice, we almost have to go with him. And if we're going 15K, we're dropping down into this mid 8K and down. So, you're looking at Sammy Smith, Sheldon Creed in that area. I think we're kind of dodging this whole 9K range, high 8K, low 9K range, if you're going with that 15,000 right there. And then we're looking at drivers a little bit further down, some guys that stand out. Ryan Sieg, inside the top 20 in 3 straight with 13th or better in 2 of those 3. I just talked about Harrison Burton. Jeb Burton's got top 20s in 5 straight, top 25s in 9 straight. He showed some upside back in 2021 with the top 5. But if we can get him somewhere in that 20th to 25th starting position at 7K, I think he becomes a good value here this week. Talked about Nick Sanchez at 6,500, was 8th here last year, was consistent on the intermediate tracks as well. Average run of 12.5 is right near the top 10. Which is really nice to see. So he'll come into play. He's probably going to be super chalk if he qualifies anywhere outside of 15th. Just looking at that. Brennan Poole's got top 20s in 4 straight at 6,300. 4 top 20s over the last 8. So like a 50% top 20. Right? He's probably someone going to qualify 25th to 30th, I'm guessing. So, I mean, if that's the case, definitely consider him as well. So a lot of these value guys that we see, we really need that place differential upside to kind of fill in, because if we're banking on Larson to dominate, lead 100, 150 laps, something like that, and win the race, we're not looking for dominator, looking for a little bit of finish position and place differential upside from these guys down here. Look at some form coming in, who's hot coming in. We got Kyle Larson coming off that win last week. Jesse Love still looking for his first win of the season, but he's got 3 top 5s. And he's the only driver that's finished top 10 in all 5 races so far this season. Austin Hill's got himself a win, and he's the only other driver outside of Love that's finished all 5 races inside the top 20. Sheldon Creed, Justin Allgaier, Sammy Smith, all tied with 3 top 5s. Creed and Allgaier both have wins as well. So, again, I do like that price tag with Creed this week. He kind of checks a lot of boxes here. And then Corey Day at 7,700. He's got 2 top 5s, 4 top 10. So it's another driver in that mid-range we maybe want to look at, who's off to a very consistent start to the year. All right, so we're going to jump into the Cup Series now. And this is where we've added some tools. We're going to go over a few more things. I've got the initial race notes up. We'll look at that here in a little bit. We've got the track history like we've had in the past. We've got the Darlington Optimals for the next gen. So it's the last 8 races. I ran the top 3 optimal lineups for each race. I've added practice speeds here for each of those races as well. Looked at the correlation of those practice speeds to dominators as well as to finish position. Keep in mind that when you're looking at the correlation here of practice to finish, because you're looking for a higher number. Anything over like 0.2 is something that we're looking at correlation. And as we get into the 0.3s, 0.4s, 0.5s and higher, that practice to finish position becomes very correlated. And then for the laps led, it's actually a negative number that we're looking for. Down to -1 would be obviously the best. So from this picture, there was correlation in the fall race last year here at Darlington from practice speed to finish position. As you can see, a lot of guys higher up in practice finished up here near the top. But the major outlier here, and we talk about too tough to tame. We talk about a lot of variance here, a lot of volatility. Chase Briscoe was 18th in practice. He was outside of 25th in all lap averages last year, ended up dominating, qualifying second and leading 309 laps. Absolutely insane, just came out of absolute nowhere. But other than that, the overall correlation between all drivers' practice speeds and their finish position wasn't that predictable. So this is a track where we can kind of throw some of that out, some of the practice speeds. If you see one of the drivers that you like, who's 20th to 30th in practice, don't toss them out. If they're a good team, they can make some changes. We definitely need to consider them. Like absolute domination last year from Chase Briscoe just says it all. So I've got, like I said, the last 8 races, all the top optimal lineups. So as you can see here over like the last 3 races, and we'll talk about some of these trends here, is 400 points. It took 450, 400, and 410 over the last 3 races when we've had these mega dominators. Those are the winning lineups that we're looking for. Now, this is full optimal. This isn't necessarily the top winning lineups on DraftKings, but this would be like the perfect lineup that you'd be looking for. So you're looking for that range in the last 3 races. If we get a super dominator again this year, like we've seen the last 3 races, you're looking at needing 7x, 8x from all your drivers. And when you look at the average of those, you're looking at close to 9x return on your lineup to be in the winning lineups. Probably, being that these are perfect lines, you're probably looking at more like an 8 to an 8.5x return if we see someone lead to 250 or more laps again. That changed in 2024. 2023, we're looking at 360. And an interesting trend here before those drivers. We'll talk about the track just here for a minute before we go forward. Like I said, the 750 low downforce package here, used on all road courses, short tracks, also Darlington and Nashville. Nashville I consider a short flat, Darlington more of an intermediate because of the banking. Of the intermediate tracks, Darlington has the lowest correlation over the last 10 races when looking at starting position to finish position. It's actually 16th among all tracks. A lot of chaos and volatility. The winner has come from the top 3 starting positions in each of the last 4 races. The winners come from the top 5 in 6 of the last 8. So only twice has the winner come from outside of the top 5, and that was Kyle Larson in the fall race of 2023, and the fall race of 2022, Eric Jones came from 15th. Other than that, we're looking at top 5 starting positions win the race. It's a pretty crazy trend so obviously track position is key. Those drivers that are starting near the front are staying out of most of the chaos for the most part, is kind of what I'm attributing that to. In terms of dominators for this track, one driver's led 100 plus in all 8 next gen races here, going back to the start of 2022. That's a little bit higher than Vegas. We have 100 more laps in this race, so it's not completely out of the realm to think, the correlation there of the 100 plus in all 8 versus Las Vegas, which I think was 6 of the last 8, just because you got that 100 extra laps. But either way, we're looking for a dominator in this race, sometimes more. But there's been a dominator to lead 145 plus laps in 7 straight, 174 plus laps in 5 straight, and 243 plus laps in 3 straight. So while we want those dominators, place differential is also key. Let's check out some more of these optimal lineups here. We've got obviously Chase Briscoe. Let's look at these last 3 races where there was 240, I call it super dominator, let's call it. Chase Briscoe, obviously in the lineup, he hit 16.7x. John Hunter Nemechek. So as you can see, we got one driver in the 9K and I'm not going to call it unusual, but something different that we see when running these optimal lineups is a lot of these races at Darlington turn out to look a lot like a build that we would see from a Talladega, from a Daytona, from an Atlanta. It's not using all the salary to get to these top lineups. Some of them are. The spring race last year almost maxed out on salary. The fall race in 2024, again, leaving like $4,000 on the table. Then we're close here again, but still we got $3,300 on the table, over $5,000 on the table in the second optimal there in 2024 in the spring race. Used the full salary in the fall race of 2023. So that just goes to more of the volatility here at Darlington and how, if you get a lot of these guys in the 5 and 6K range who are getting double-digit place differential like this, and you have a guy that's completely dominating 200-300 laps, we're going to see sometimes where you don't have to worry about the salary, using up all the salary or whatever, making adjustments there. Leaving 2, 3, even up to 5,000 on the table isn't crazy. It's not something I would do if I'm playing one lineup, but if I'm playing multiple lineups, I'm going to have a lot of lineups where I'm leaving that much on the table. One, it's going to separate you a little bit from the field, who normally, you probably look at 40-50% of the people building lineups in those big GPPs are trying to maximize their full salary in there, unless you're using like tools like a lot of sites have, where you can kind of limit it and say, hey, only use a maximum of 47,000 to make my lineups. There's not a lot of people doing that. And I think the number would probably be around, like I said, 40-50%. So you kind of get ahead of that a little bit by building some lineups and leaving a bunch on the table. So make sure to consider that. And that's been a trend we've seen here at Darlington, not really at any other intermediate tracks or any other tracks for that matter outside of the super speedways. So something to keep in mind when building GPP lineups this weekend. Going back to the place differential here, looking at those last 8 races, we haven't had any drivers. Now, it's right in line with the other intermediate tracks, Darlington is, but we've seen 9, 6, 8, 8, 6, 8, 6, 9. So 8 or more drivers have had double-digit place differential in 6 of the 8 races. So that place differential a lot of times does come from the value range. So when we look at our lineup builds here, we're generally looking for 1 dominator, 3 mid-tier place differential plays, like from that 65 to 65/7K, somewhere in there, up to 8,500. We'll consider that top tier like 85 and up, even 9K and up. And then 2 value plays kind of down in that mid 6K down to 5K range. And not just punting drivers. We're really looking for practice speeds. Like we look at John Hunter Nemechek last year, finished 4th. He started 30th. He showed it in practice. He was 10th here in practice. Then we've got AJ Allmendinger finished right behind him in 5th. He had double-digit place differential. He showed it in practice too. He was 7th in practice. Other guys, Kyle Busch, double-digit place differential, was 9th in practice. Carson Hocevar, 7,300, double-digit place differential. He was 4th in practice. Noah Gragson fits in here in the second optimal lineup here. He started 34th. He was 5th in practice and came ahead. So definitely something to look for a little bit more is that practice. On the sheet I have, once we get practice and qualifying in there, I have a qualifying to practice differential. While it's not a complete predictor of anything, it's just showing you drivers that showed a lot more speed in practice versus what they showed in qualifying where they're starting. So I really, really like looking at that, especially from a value driver's perspective. So that's a few things looking at the optimal lineups here for the Cup sheet. Let's now just go ahead and look at some drivers who have the best track history here. And again, like I have with the previous Cup sheet so far this season, I've sorted it down a little bit, and any of the races that have this size of sample now in terms of next gen era, I've sorted that out. So I've got the last 8 races in the next gen and their results. Then we've got next gen stats here, wins, top 5s, 10s, average finish, laps led, that sort of thing. And then if you're looking at just 2025 stats, I've got those here as well. We've then got the intermediate track type history, season form. This is where you'll find the practice and qualifying rankings show up once that happens on Saturday afternoon, and then the complete final model. So obviously before practice and qualifying, the model is sorted around that data that we were going to look at here. So I've got average finish next gen era, DK average. We've got track type history, a little bit on last year's form here at Darlington as well, and then some season form, which is a little bit lower. But like I said, we've also had races at Daytona, Atlanta, Coda, Phoenix, Las Vegas. So for the first time all season, in the 6th race of the season, we're racing on a similar track. And can we call it a similar track in an intermediate as Las Vegas? Not a chance. Darlington is, without the 750 horsepower package, is different in itself, is kind of a one-off because of the wear that we see on the tires and cars just being out of control, puts a lot more on the driver. This is a track where you're definitely going to see the more experienced drivers more often than not finishing higher up than those inexperienced drivers. Now, like I said, a lot of volatility because of wrecks and stuff that can happen, just being cars out of control. That could be even raised a little bit more this year. So keep that in mind. But definitely a track where the experienced drivers over the long term are going to have the best average finishes. So we are going to actually look at that right now. Those average finishes. Leading the way, Tyler Reddick. Ooh, is he going to be super chalked this week? He's got 3 wins this season. He's got 4 top 10s, and his only finish outside the top 10 was the 13th last week at Vegas. He's got 5 top 5s, 6 top 10s in those 8 races in the next gen era here at Darlington, 2nd and 4th last year. So 9,500, he may be a direction that we want to go here, maybe pairing one of these top guys with Tyler Reddick. Right behind him, Denny Hamlin, he's finished top 10 in 4 straight. He won the spring race here last year. He's coming off a win at Vegas last week. So I think pairing those 2 Toyotas have been fast so far this season. Just looking at the season form here, let's go, instead of going by points, which does count in there some of the stages and stuff like that, I like looking at average finish here just to see consistency. So yeah, you've got Tyler Reddick, teammate Bubba Wallace in the 2311 car. Got Denny Hamlin in a Toyota. So Toyotas take up 3 of the top 4 in terms of they got 4 wins between them. They take up 3 of the top 4 spots in terms of average finish as well. So going back over here and looking at the track history, Denny Hamlin right behind him at 9.9. Those, depending on practice and qualifying, those two are probably right up there in terms of ownership projections right away. So keep that in mind. William Byron he's third at 10.6, and this is where we start seeing some volatility in a lot of these drivers. Is there isn't a lot of consistency. There isn't a lot of drivers that are finishing top 10 year after year after year. William Byron, 21st, 2nd, 30th, 6th in his last 4 in the last 2 years. Before that, he was 4th and 1st, so he's won here in the spring race in 2023. Christopher Bell had back-to-back podium finishes of 3rd in the fall race of 2024 and the spring race of 2025. Boom, 29th. He's got a 23rd, and there are 2 finishes outside the 13th here. Joey Logano, and these are the guys that are top in average finish over the 8 races here. So you can just see that volatility starting to form. Now, some drivers that do stand out in terms of, let's say, consistency recently, Chris Buescher for sure, 10th or better in 3 straight and 5 of his last 6 races here. Very good to see. Brad Keselowski's kind of trended down. He had a streak of 4 straight top 10s, including a win in the 24 spring race, 14th, 33rd, and 15th in his last. Chase Briscoe, he's bookended a 28th place finish in the spring race here last year with wins in 2025 and 2024. So his price is probably higher than it's ever been at this track, considering that. But not only has he been good here in the next-gen area with 2 wins in his last 3 races, top 5s in 3 of his last 4, he was extremely consistent when we move into the intermediate portion of the sheet here. Number 1, he had a win, which was here at Darlington. He had 6. He leads the series with 6 top 10s, is tied with 2 other drivers with 6 top 5s, 7 top 10s in those last 10 intermediate races. Very, very consistent. He is 4th in laps led. A lot of that has to do with the 309 laps he led here at Darlington, but take that with a grain of salt. He seems to be a lot better when he comes here recently. So back over here looking at the next-gen era, some drivers that stand out. Maybe we get down into the value range here. AJ Allmendinger I like a lot as well. And if you want to read he's one of the drivers that I featured in my article over on Fantrax, fantraxhq.com. I do an article every week looking at the DFS preview for the NASCAR race. Comes out before this video, so you can go ahead and check that out maybe when you're done here if you'd like to read rather than listen to this whole entire video, which, by the way, I'm going to add some timestamps in there just to help out a little bit on that. But this is where you'll find the article, fantraxhq.com. And I wrote about some drivers. I previewed the track like we did here, looked at the fantasy angle. So I talked about Briscoe, Hamlin, Reddick, Chris Buescher, and AJ Allmendinger was in there as well. 5th, 18th, 13th, and 23rd. So a pretty good run for him at only 6,100. He was fairly consistent on the intermediate tracks last year as well. 2 top 5s and 4 top 10s over the last 10 races in the intermediates. He's also got 4 top 20s in 5 races so far this year. So he kind of checks a little bit of every box there. Ty Gibbs, someone with some upside. 8K is nice. We can do that where we're looking at one top dominator and then kind of head down, maybe skip over that 9K range, high 8, low 9K range, kind of like we talked about with Kyle Larson in the O'Reilly Auto Parts series. But Ty Gibbs might be someone. He has been very up and down, 22nd, 9th, 22nd. He's shown that upside. Toyota has been fast. He hasn't been great on the intermediate tracks over the last 10, but he's been very consistent this year so far. 3 top 5s in 5 races is very good, right up there with the Toyota camp. So keep that in mind. 8K, you might see some ownership on him. I'd like to see him start probably in the 15th to 20th range. I don't see that happening just because of how good they've been. He's got an average start of 14.2. Last week at Las Vegas, let's find Gibbs here. Last week at Las Vegas, he started 3rd. So there's good speed on the first intermediate track of the season. So may become more of a GPP play if he is starting, somewhere inside the top 5, top 8. Outside of that, I think I'll consider him at 8K, and that's something that we will look at a little bit more on the live show Sunday, using the fantasy matrix after qualifying and practice is done. Eric Jones, 7,500, consistent on the intermediate tracks last year, 2 top 5s. They were his only 2 top 10s, but he was consistently inside the top 20. So someone will be looking for place differential if he starts outside the top 20. He's coming off a 3rd here in the fall last year, 17th. He's got top 20 in 4 of his last 5, and he's actually finished 25th or better in all 8 races in the next gen era, including a win in 2022 in the fall. So someone that we're going to want to keep our eyes on there as well. Kyle Busch comes in with 3 straight top 10s here at the track. Austin Cindric at 6,900 has finished 13th or better in 3 straight and top 20 in 7 of 8 races. Only 3 drivers have done that in the Cup Series over those 8 next-gen era races here at Darlington, so that kind of stands out there as well. Ross Chastain I didn't talk about, but he's finished 11th in 5 straight here, including 3 top 10s. So keep an eye on him. 8,800 could be a little bit more of a pivot off of some of the Toyotas. I think the Toyotas are going to be very high owned this week for good reason. They've been fast. They have good track history. It just kind of stands out there. Now, something I've added, I think we talked about this last week, but either way, we've got salary trend. So I've got the season average, every race and every driver's salary, and then we've got the season average, and then I broke it into track type averages as well, which right now is only about 1 race of sample size outside of the super speedways and now the intermediates. But as we get deeper into the season, especially intermediate and short flats, road courses, we can kind of see where a driver's salary is, and maybe we can find some value there. So if you have more that you want to add to this tool, to any of the tools or any tools that you think would help you in research, please let me know in the comments. Let me know on Twitter at Jaeger_bombs9 or at C Durrell Fantasy. That's just my personal account. You can check that out and hit me up there too if you'd like, or in our Discord chat. And if you're new and you're looking for access to all 3 of these sheets as we get the practice qualifying data and all the tools that come with them, our Discord chat, $15 a month, all 3 series. So that works out to, if you break it down, just talking about Cup here, $15 a month, you're getting on average 3 races. You're looking at less than $4 per race weekend, and that's going to get you access to the trucks, O'Reilly Auto Parts, as well as the Cup Series. So head over to patreon.com/JaegerBombs, and you will find our NASCAR package, $15 a month. You will also find, if you're playing multiple sports, like March Madness started today, Dane has got a betting sheet. He's got a full bracket breakdown. He's got, that betting sheet updates every single day. He started out 2-0 last night in the, I think they call it the first 4. Not really up in my college basketball, but Dane has lit it up. I think he's got 3 entries into the king of the bracket as well. So if you want to sweat that out, he's posting that in chat. We're covering NHL, NBA, MLB starts in a week. We've got tennis. We've got UFC, 10 plus sports, $25 a month. That's patreon.com/JaegerBombs. Again, that covers everything that we're looking at here this week. We've looked at the trucks. We've looked at the O'Reilly Auto Parts. We've looked at the Cup Series. One of the favorite tracks on the NASCAR circuit this season, Darlington, now gets the 750 horsepower. Should be an absolutely amazing race. I can't wait for Sunday. Reminder, Sunday morning, right around 11 a.m. Eastern, I will be going live to talk about practice, qualifying, the fantasy matrix, lineup builds, top bets, top props, pick 6. Anything you want to talk about on Sunday going into the race, hit me up. Same YouTube channel, same name. With that, thank you very much for tuning in to another preview show, and we'll talk to you on Sunday.